You are taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Denisha Richard. In the weeks leading up to the election, we are helping Kansans know your vote as you head out to the polls. This week, we are highlighting 2 amendments that you will see on your ballot. We start today off by talking about question 1 regarding legislative oversight and veto of administrative rules and regulations. Joining me today are 2 experts on this amendment. We have Terry Huntington and Eric Stafford. Thank you both for joining me for this conversation today. So I do want to start off by having you guys stake your claim. So Terry, if the viewer is listening to you and they are liking what you are saying, they need to vote what?
Vote no.
All right. And Eric, for you, if we are listening to you and we like what you're saying, what do we vote?
We would ask voters to vote yes.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get into this conversation now that you guys have staked your claim. Eric, there is quite the argument right now about this amendment that it was created to actually undermine Governor Laura Kelly's administration. But you say that this is not true.
Yeah, correct. So let's take it back to 2018 when we were working on rule and reg legislation, again, to help improve the regulatory climate in the state of Kansas. We testified in support of a bill and offered an amendment to adopt what Wisconsin did, which is known as the REINS Act, that gives the legislature the ability to vote and stop harmful or conflicting regulations that might not agree with statute that the legislature passes. And at that time, we were told, due to a 1980s Supreme Court decision, Kansas Supreme Court decision, Kansas did not have the authority to give that legislative oversight. And so, in our view, this has been an effort to improve our regulatory climate dating back to 2018. The law that we did pass strengthened the economic statement that state agencies are required to put out to talk about the economic impact of proposed regulations and the effect on businesses and individuals. That law was signed into place by then Governor Jeff Collier, the predecessor to Laura Kelly. So we would make the strong argument that this has nothing to do with the Kelly administration.
Eric, the Kansas Chamber, that's the organization that you were with, they say that the amendment will restore, quote, checks and balances. Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, I think the issue arises when the administrative state, the agencies under the executive branch, create rules and regulations that conflict with the statute passed by the legislature, or not only conflict, but might go above and beyond what the legislature intended to do. Just this past year, we testified in opposition. Former Senator Huntington mentioned the Joint Committee on Rules and Regulations. We appeared before that committee to oppose regulations proposed by the Department of Labor that, in our view, flat out conflicted with the statutes in place dealing with the workers' compensation system. But at that point, there's nothing that the committee can do. They have no ability to stop those regulations as they have moved through the process through approval from the Attorney General's office, the Secretary of State's office, the Department of Administration. The agency, I mentioned the economic impact statements earlier. Every one of the 7 regulations, every question asked, they wrote not applicable, not applicable, not applicable, that there's no economic impact to those affected. But they don't know that. They never reached out to those individuals that were targeted or impacted by the proposed regulations. But again, it just is a perfect example that the legislature has no ability to stop an agency if they run away with some idea that they like or don't like, or if the agency if they don't like the law that was passed by the legislature, they could potentially choose just to not enforce it through their own rules and regulations that they come up with.
Well, Terry, when you talk about checks and balances, the question you have is, does the legislature wish to minimize and dilute the 3 equal branches? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as I said, I think if there is an egregious rules and reg, and you were mentioning the labor a bill concerning the Labor Department, and I'm not familiar with that, but the legislature always has the power to convene, and it's my understanding that the Rules and Regs Committee brings in people to testify. They take their rules and regs to the public for oversight. Then they bring it to the Legislative Oversight Committee, which has the opportunity to ask questions, make suggestions, and then if no changes are made, if the rules and regs go on as written, then the legislature can always come back and, as I said, introduce a bill to amend them or revoke the bill. So yes, I think it does dilute the three branches. It takes away from the administration, the executive branch's authority to enforce and enact, whereas, you know, obviously the legislature has put the law into effect. So probably not necessary.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back from break, so stay with us. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Hi, I'm Steve Matukowicz.
And I'm Diana Cox. Together with Washburn University, we're bringing you Everything Woman,
A 27 news series highlighting everyday women who do not get the recognition and attention they deserve. A special teacher, an encouraging coach, a work-from-home mom. Everyday women with their own unique stories.
If there's a special woman you'd like to nominate, go to KSNT.com and click on Everything Woman.
Everything Woman, sponsored by Sharp Honda, Topeka ER and Hospital, and Washburn University.
Highland Community College is ready for you to join us on campus to get the degree you've always been wanting. HCC offers many different career paths, some taking less than 2 years to achieve. Secure your future by choosing Highland. Visit highlandcc.edu for more information. Go Scotties!
This week's Morning Coffee Club prize is a rain gauge, sponsored by Kansas 811. Sign up at ksnt.com for your chance to win. Then watch 27 News weekday mornings from 5 to 7 to see if you've won.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics, continuing our conversation on question 1, or the legislative veto or oversight amendment that you will see on your ballots this November 8th. Talking a little bit more about that today, I want to clear this up. There's a lot of chatter that this amendment is somewhat of a backdoor in the abortion rights fight. Is this true, or is it some type of misinterpretation that's going on here? Eric, do you think there's some type of misinterpretation? What's happening with that?
Yeah, I think it's an entire misinterpretation, especially about that issue. Say, for example, that there's an administration that is very pro-life and they don't like court cases or don't feel that Kansas statutes go far enough and want to implement rules and regulations to strengthen a pro-life position on the abortion issue. They could promulgate rules and regulations to try to accomplish that. And that's what we're talking about in terms of a runaway executive branch or administrative agency process that the legislature has no checks and balances for. And if an administration were to do that, the legislature, if this constitutional amendment on rules and regulations were to pass, the legislature would have the ability to stop those rules and regulations that go beyond the statutes dealing with abortion or conflict with case law that the Supreme Court has ruled on abortion. So in our view, for that specific example, this gives stronger protections to those who might be concerned about effort to kind of backdoor the case law on abortion rights.
And Terry, I believe you mentioned that this is actually one of the things that you actually agree with Eric on.
I just don't think it is a backdoor to the abortion issue. I think it really has to do with the administrative process and how rules and regs are enacted, and what happens if you don't like one. What happens if one person chooses not to like one rule and reg, then by a simple majority of 84 people in the House, you can rule it null and void. Is that the best way when all of the rules and regs have been through the process and have gone through the many layers of questioning and oversight and talking with the experts? I'm not 100% sure that being a citizen legislature, that all of the legislators would have an intimate knowledge of what the staff and the rules and regs of each department.
Does this kind of dig us into a little bit of a hole when you talk about it? If they don't like something, if legislature doesn't like something, they can just, hey, we don't like this, let's overrule it. Is there some type of black hole with that possibility?
I think it's an opportunity for mischief. If there's one area that one legislator for a specific agency doesn't like, it offers an opportunity, just as I said, with that simple vote, to get rid of it. And not knowing, perhaps they have not done the research on what it's taken to get that rule enacted anyway. So yes, opportunity for mischief.
Opportunity for mischief. What do you think about that, Eric?
I entirely disagree. You know, this would put Kansas in line with the number of states that have legislative oversight for the rule and reg process. Not every state is the same, but a good number of states, close to half, have some sort of legislative oversight on the rule and reg process. So it's not like this puts Kansas as an outlier. It just strengthens the ability of the legislature to guard against a runaway executive branch who tries to accomplish things through the rule and reg process. You see it at the national level all the time through Congress and the executive power of the president. You know, whether it's President Biden or President Trump or President Reagan or President Bush or President Obama, to declare that the lesser prairie chicken is an environmental threat that impacts Kansas citizens. Under what authority? Congress didn't pass that. They're just using rules and regs through the Environmental Protection and through the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and this is giving that check and balance to the legislature to ensure that that type of behavior from the executive branch does not happen.
Thank you both for your thoughts on that. Before we end, I want to ask you all one more time. If everyone liked what you said today, they're going to vote what?
Vote no.
All right. And Eric, if we liked what you said today, what are they going to do when they get to the polls?
Vote yes.
All right. Thank you both so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
All right. Coming up next, we are going to talk a little bit more about the amendments you are going to see on your ballot when you get to the polls. Question number 2, how we elect our sheriff. We'll be right back.
Keep your holidays in sync with free pickup on all your fresh favorites from Dillon's. Dillon's, fresh for everyone.
Watch KCN for your VIP, all-access coverage of your team.
Friday nights at 10 on Fox 43 KTMJ. Sponsored by DraftKings, Manhattan Area Technical College, and Farview Farms. What happens here matters here. That's why the 27 News Capitol Bureau brings the important stories home to you like no one else can.
Let's go live to the State House.
Here's Capitol Bureau reporter Denisha Richard.
It's been a long road, but the governor has finally signed the bill into law today.
Because decisions made here impact you, your family, and your home. We have your Capitol News covered.
Right now, there's a big political divide on this issue.
The 27 News Capitol Bureau, working for you.
Now in its 35th year, it's CASA of Shawnee County's Homes for the Holidays Tour, November 19th and 20th. Visit 3 homes beautifully decorated by local expert designers. All the money raised helps children in our community. Get your tickets today for Homes for the Holidays.
I want all of y'all to come see me at the Jennifer Hudson Show. I feel like I got a house full of guests every day. From the neighborhood, we've got Beth Bears, plus the very handsome Aldous Hodge.
Monday at 1.
With Dillon's Delivery, it's easy to get your special holiday foods brought right to your door. And that's music to your ears. Dillon's, fresh for everyone.
Welcome back. Continuing our Know Your Vote coverage leading up to the election on November 8th. It's an amendment that would decide how a sheriff would take office in the state. It's called Question 2, or the Sheriff Election Amendment. Joining me today is Cherokee County Sheriff David Groves along with attorney Amy Castle. Thank you both for joining us today to discuss this topic. So at first, I want to lay it out all on the table. For those who are listening to you, Amy, you want them to vote what?
Vote no. Probably not why you think, but at the end of the day, vote no on this constitutional amendment.
Okay, Sheriff Groves, what do you want people to do who listen to you?
It's a strong vote, yes.
All right, perfect. So this conversation has been said around the entire state of Kansas. Very confusing for many Kansas voters. People don't know what's going on. What's happening? How does this affect us? Sheriff Groves, I want you to talk a little bit more about why you think it's so confusing for Kansas voters.
Yeah, Kansans are used to going to the polls every 4 years and casting the ballot for their candidate of choice for the office of sheriff. They're shocked to learn that while they have an ability to vote for their sheriff. They do not have a constitutional right, and that means the ability can be taken away from them.
Well, let's focus a little bit on Johnson County. If you're anywhere on social media, you may have actually seen this online. It was a post by the Johnson County Sheriff's Office that described a little bit more about what this is about. Take a look at your screen and we'll show that there. It has been listed as very misleading. And of course, you know, this is evidence that many sheriff's departments are probably scared or anxious to see what's going to happen with this amendment. Have you been hearing any word around the sheriff community?
You know, sheriffs are actually pretty excited. We've been engaged with citizen groups, civic organizations throughout the state. And again, initially citizens are shocked to learn that they don't have a constitutional right to elect their sheriff. But once they learn that, they overwhelmingly want that right to vote for their sheriff, and so it's been really positive. And sheriffs, you know, we want to preserve the office of sheriff. Again, it's not about any single individual sheriff, it's about preserving the office of sheriff and ensuring that citizens have a voice as to who leads their county law enforcement agency.
That's all well and good, but there is, in our state constitution, there is no provision for a county official to be popularly elected. So actually the notion that it should be baked into our constitution that a particular office should be popularly elected, that's actually anomaly. It's sort of a new idea. So it's not like all of our county officials, there's a constitutional protection that they are elected. In fact, this would be the first county official that would be added to the state constitution that would require that they be elected.
Right now, a county or district attorney, they can actually oust a sheriff at this time. But if this amendment were to be enacted, that role would then go to the attorney general. You say this is problematic. Why?
If this amendment passes, what this would do would take away the power from local county attorneys, local district attorneys, from initiating an investigation altogether, and would concentrate that power in the Attorney General only and solely. So it would be completely up to the Attorney General, who sits in Topeka most days, to decide whether a proceeding to initiate a sheriff who's been engaging in shenanigans, right, tampering with evidence or hiding evidence in a criminal case. Hopefully that doesn't go on, but not all sheriffs behave properly, right? And so it would take away any power from local attorneys, local county attorneys, to initiate an investigation. And at the end of the day, local county attorneys don't have any power whatsoever to oust a sheriff, right? But they can request that investigation begin.
But obviously, Sheriff Groves, you agree with the role being the Attorney General.
Well, I want to go back to the previous question too, and as Amy said, Kansas doesn't currently mention the office of sheriff or any local offices in the state constitution, but that's not the case in 35 states across the country. Kansas is one of 15 that does not protect the office of sheriff or other local offices in their state constitution. But going back to the local attorney and district attorney being able to initiate those proceedings, we absolutely believe that the Attorney General's office, detached from the local influence of politics or personal animus between the sheriff and the county attorney, is the place for those investigations to be conducted. And certainly a local county or district attorney can learn of allegations of misconduct, submit that to the Attorney General, who then can investigate it, detached from that local influence.
Okay.
But the problem as I see it, though, if you have a local county attorney who believes that a sheriff is engaged in misconduct, and post-amendment, if there's a yes vote on this amendment, what that means is that local county attorney has no power to initiate any investigation.
No power at all.
No power at all whatsoever. So that local county attorney calls the Attorney General in Topeka, again, who sits there in Topeka most days, and says, hey, will you initiate an investigation into this sheriff? The problem that I see is if, depending on who's in the office of Attorney General, right, that Attorney General might say, nah, we good. I'm not going to investigate because I like that sheriff, right? And so that's my problem, is you are taking, if this amendment passes, that is taking power away from all 105 local counties, right, local county attorneys, and concentrating that power into one office. And that's where there could be potential abuse of power, where an attorney general either decides to initiate an investigation, or more problematically, decides to not initiate an investigation, leaving that local county attorney with no avenue whatsoever.
And I would say on the flip side of that, where you're making an assumption that the Attorney General will not initiate an investigation, what about the circumstances when the sheriff and the county attorney are butting heads and the county attorney files an ouster proceeding, initiates that proceeding based on a meritless allegation? It doesn't require, the law doesn't require a complaint be filed with that office in order to initiate those proceedings.
But that proceeding is a legal proceeding in a court of law, and then a judge takes over, right?
Okay, we're going to finish this conversation. We're going to go right to break, but we will be right back. We're going to finish this conversation on the Sheriff Elections Amendment. Stay with us.
Devon James wins.
We're Devon James. As lawyers who focus on serious injuries, we know what really matters.
We've helped people get life-saving care after sudden accidents.
We've been there to restore hope during long recoveries.
And fought to provide a better future to those who need it most.
That's why at Devon James, we fight for everything you deserve.
And we will win your case, or you pay us nothing.
Devon James wins. Call 888-8888.
The Jennifer Hudson Show is here. Everybody put your hands together. I gotta talk to you now.
I left work to come.
You left work? They gonna see you. He's with me today. We're lighting up daytime, baby.
And you gonna bless people every single day.
We're giving back, lifting each other up. Something hits you in your heart. We're doing it all. Yeah! Mama Hood, coming to the rescue.
Weekdays at 1 on 27 KSNT.
When we're putting together Fox 43 AM Live, we try to think of everything you might want to see in a morning show. We highlight upcoming local events and entertainment, great cooking tips, book recommendations. Our Best Reviews team can help make your life a little easier. We also have some big star interviews. Those are always fun. Really, there's just too much to tell you about. All right, maybe we didn't think of everything. I'll be right back.
Fox 43 AM Live, weekday mornings at 9.
I just got an urgent case. We're essentially stealing an aircraft.
It's a simple task for someone with your training and experience.
You two will most likely do something that results in laws getting broken.
Don't worry, we got this.
Teamwork makes the dream work, baby.
Last week, it's a gunshot. This week, it's a plane crash. What's next? You're really enjoying this, aren't you?
Don't know what you're talking about.
Sundays at 11:30 on 27 KSNT.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. Again, continuing our conversation on the Sheriff's Elections Amendment. We just got into a little bit of a discussion about possibly a conflict of interest. Amy, you were saying that an attorney general, hey, if they like the sheriff, don't worry about it. Hang up the phone and it's okay. But Sheriff Groves, you were talking a little bit more about what if that attorney general doesn't like the sheriff or has some type of vendetta against the sheriff or the county in general, then that could also be in effect as well. So Amy, that conflict of interest, do you think that's more so apt to happen versus Sheriff Groves' position?
I do, and because of the nature of the relationship between a county attorney or district attorney and the sheriff, because if you think about it, who is working day to day with each other? The local county attorneys are working day to day with the sheriff's office, so it's going to be the local county attorney who likely knows or suspects that a sheriff has been behaving badly. And so it's not going to be that attorney general in Topeka who has their thumb on the pulse of the community and knows when a sheriff might be behaving badly. So my concern is that it's the local county attorneys, the local district attorneys who know what's going on with the sheriff's department. And if they want to initiate an investigation, file this legal proceeding, they are prohibited from doing so if this amendment passes. And again, that power is concentrated in one person and one office.
And I would just counter with saying that if a county attorney believes that a sheriff is engaging in illegal conduct, they absolutely have an ability to have that investigated either through another law enforcement agency or the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, who is able to fully investigate that and then file criminal charges if that's what's appropriate at the conclusion of that investigation. And that says nothing about the ability of citizens to still recall their sheriff regardless of whether an ouster proceeding is initiated or not. If the citizens feel that the sheriff is not acting in their best interest or is engaging in misconduct, citizens still have an ability to recall that sheriff. This amendment has no impact on that whatsoever.
But when you think about it, many Kansans may wonder, well, is this really needed? How many times has this been applicable to the state of Kansas? I mean, there's been several times where a sheriff there was a process to oust a sheriff, but it wasn't successful. Sheriff Groves?
Well, I think that there has been successful efforts to oust a sheriff. There have been thwarted efforts in the abolishing of a sheriff's office in a county. We've seen 6 or 7 over the last 15, 20 years where efforts have been made in local communities to abolish the elected office of sheriff, and those have not been successful.
Well, when you really think about it, Kansans, they're just so confused about what's happening, so many different sides on what could truly happen if this amendment were to be enacted. What do you think some of the biggest misconceptions about this amendment are? Amy, what have you been hearing?
Well, I think the biggest misconceptions, first of all, not many are talking about the taking the power away from local district and county attorneys, and most are focused on this democratic notion of, okay, well, going forward, we're going to make sure that our top law enforcement official in the county is elected, and so that appeals to a lot of people. Go democracy, right? So I think that's the misconception, is that it is this idea where going forward we're going to make sure that our sheriffs are popularly elected. But there's also another counter to that. If you're a constitutional amendment saying that a sheriff must be elected, the top law enforcement official must be elected, well, then you're also taking power away from local county governments who might want to consolidate, right? Consolidate like Riley County has done. Take a county and all the cities within that county and consolidate, and then under a consolidated government, there's no local elected sheriff or no elected sheriff. And so you're taking power away from counties and cities to consolidate and decide how they want to run their own governments.
And Sheriff Groves, go ahead and wrap it up and tell me what you are thinking about what Amy just said.
I would just say that, with all due respect, that's not accurate. Counties and cities are still able to consolidate under this amendment. The only difference is, so if city police departments and sheriff's office, county sheriff's office wanted to consolidate their resources into one law enforcement agency throughout the county, they absolutely can. The only difference is the citizens will have the authority and the power to decide who leads that county law enforcement agency rather than a board of bureaucrats.
All right, so let's say this again. Amy, you want people to vote what?
No.
Sheriff Groves, you want people to vote what?
It's a solid yes.
All right, well, thank you guys for your opinions and that information to help people decide how they're going to vote on November 8th. And again, if you want the facts for how this amendment will affect Kansas and the actual amendment wording, you can view that online on our website on KSNT.com.